Dear students, welcome to my classroom of research methodology in history. Today I am going to teach you about narrative or narrations and history. So these are the concepts which will help you to have an idea about historiography, the art of writing history, and also about research methodology in social sciences, focusing history as well. So if I start my lecture with narration, what does it mean? Narration is a part of narratology. Narratology means something which is very much constructive. It's a part of constructivist theory. And also when we talk on narration, that means we are talking something about our creation as well as how we are depicting the same. Then it's also a part of structuralism. That means we are structuring something, constructing something. So these are very difficult, or I may say, like, for your level might be a bit hypothetical, but we can make the things simple because I believe research methodology is a paper where we are not only dealing with the theories, we are also trying to share our experiences so that we can enrich ourselves as well we can contribute for the betterment of the society. Let me narrate a story to you. That is the story of scholasticism. What does it mean? Like in medieval Europe, how the teachers, they used to teach their students. And these teachers, they were known as the schoolmen. And they were the Christian priests along with others, like some scholars from the Arab world or some scholars like from the other parts of the world, gradually who imbibed this particular technique and spread it as well. In scholasticism, the schoolmen or the teachers, they used to come to the classrooms without books. Whatever they taught their students, all were in the form of conversations. They were sharing their views as well as they are also learning from their students. So these ways of dialogue delivery are termed as scholasticism, and the formation of academic dialogues are known as discourses. So here I have narrated the story of scholasticism for you. Another story I would like to share, that is the story of how the Gurukul system in ancient India worked. That there the gurus, they were the mentors of their students, and the students, they used to stay at the place of the gurus, and it was known as Gurukul system or ashrama. These gurus, they used to keep these students in their houses or in the Gurukul like their own children, and the students, they used to give Guru Dakshina, that means an honorarium to the gurus in form of kind, not in the form of cash. So the gurus and their disciples, who are known as Shishyas, they used to have a very cordial and intimate relationship. That means a relationship between the father and the sons. This is also a kind of narration. Now, if I would like to tell you one more story. That is the story of the education in modern India, with special emphasis on the contributions of the Jesuits. If I take St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, as an example, then you must be able to get an idea about how the Jesuits, they contributed to a great extent for the growth and development of education in Bengal, especially during the times of the colonial rulers, and how they established their institution and helped to serve the humanity or the human beings during that time, which is a legacy we are carrying even in these days. So these three examples are the examples of narration or narrative. When we talk on narration, it is also important for us to get an idea about certain components of narratology or narratives. First, I would like to start with fabula. This is a concept where we are dealing with the chronology of the events. That means when I gave you the example of three stories belonging from three different periods of history, and as how I maintained the chronology of the events, though not in a perfect manner, but still I tried, because I started with the medieval Europe, then I went to ancient India, then I gave you an example of modern India. But I tried to maintain some kind of a chronology or continuity, because the topic is education. This is called fabula. And there is one more aspect which we need to know, that is known as sujet. That means how are we representing the events, the way, the style, the manner. In my academic script and PPT, you will get more information about the same. But when I talk on sujet, I must say that it is linked with subjectivity, the representation of the narration, the representation of fabula, how I am representing the chronological events. Definitely, my emphasis was on to serve humanity. That is called sujet, because here I am feeling indebted to these ways of teaching people and how they became legacies for others to follow. When I talk on narration, then it's also important for us to understand that why is it important? Why it is needed? Because not all of us are historians. Now you can ask me the question, who are historians then? The historians are the people who have the noble duty to preserve truth. History talks truth. But definitely there is a difference between history and science. History is unable to produce priori or the ultimate truth, which is a very much part of science. In science, we only deal with objectivity. We say sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Do we have any other alternative? No. That's why it's a priori or an ultimate truth. When we study philosophy of history, that time we deal with priori. We have the social and psychoanalytical constructions of priori, like how the theorists, they look at priori. If I give you an example of the same, then I would like to start with Marx. That for Marx, the advent of scientific socialism is a priori, that it will definitely happen. And how we will be able to achieve scientific socialism or equality for all, for that purpose, he gave us certain formulas like class struggle and class exploitation, which we can apply to understand the social and economic dimensions or the forces. Secondly, the class exploitation leads to class struggle, where we find that one day will definitely come when the proletariats or the have-nots will be able to overcome all their sorrows and difficulties and will throw away the exploitators, that means the bourgeois, from the yoke of power. For Marx, he was trying to narrate the events. So he also dealt with fabula, sujet, and from his side, he also talked on priori. But here, when we are dealing with history, situating priori is very much subjective, because all of us are individuals. It's not like that all of us are having same ideas and same thoughts. So what Marx thought that it is inevitable, for others it is a myth, or for others it's not possible to eliminate inequality from the society. So in history, definitely we are dealing with objectivity, but history is a subject where emotions matter. That's why it is subjective. How you are looking at a particular topic or theme. I love to give examples in my classroom, in my virtual classroom, because I believe that helps the students to understand the topic. Here my point is how I am giving a lecture on narrative and history, which is very much based on my personal experiences and observations. Perhaps if someone comes with more theories and bookish knowledge, then the approach would be different. We need to make the subject acceptable and interesting as we deal with human minds. So that's why in history also we have a laboratory like science, where we are trying to dissect or trying to know the human minds. From that perspective, history is like science, what J.B. Bury once stated. If I would like to give you one more example of E.H. Carr. E.H. Carr has a very famous book on history, and the name is also very much interesting for the beginners, and which goes like that: what is history? What is history? Still it's a mystery. Why? Because there are many definitions, and those definitions are never ending, and we are still thinking about how we can define history. That is a part of critical thinking, which perhaps what I feel E.H. Carr tried to conceptualize or tried to theorize. He started the beginning of that kind of discourse, which is still continuing. We are following the legacy of E.H. Carr. For me, history is very much real, naturalistic. History is our everyday life because we live in history. Why we are reading history? It's not like that. It is helping us to achieve our materialistic gains or desires. History helps us to create history. How can we create history? That is a question. Because history is giving you that kind of inspiration so that you will be able to think and do something through which you can change the society. That's why I'm telling that history means not only reading the pages of the history books, rather history means how we can revolutionize our minds to transform the society so that we can also create history. All of us are the integral part of history. History talks society. All of us are social animals. So here I find one striking contrast between history and narratives. Narrative or narration is something where we are more or less depicting or describing the events. But it's not our job or duty to justify or to validate the facts. Narration we can witness in the forms of stories, novels. Also, we can see narration in the films, documentaries. Even a song can narrate a story. Narration is something which is subjective and objective both. If I narrate the writings of Mahatma Gandhi, focusing his book Hind Swaraj, I must tell you, those narrations help us to understand his psyche, that how he tried to promote indigenous industry, culture, and heritage, and how he criticized the Western civilization. Especially how the Western civilizations modernized our minds, which was very much detrimental as it made us to forget our roots. This is a kind of narration. But if I would like to link this narration with history, then I should give emphasis on the facts, like when Hind Swaraj was written, when Gandhiji was writing Hind Swaraj, what was the situation in the country? So these are the facts which are historical, which helped us to understand the history behind Hind Swaraj. But when I am narrating Hind Swaraj, it's not like all the time I am focusing on the historical facts. Rather, I am explaining or elaborating those facts with my own understanding. If I talk about a film, if I take the movie Sound of Music, it's a very interesting movie because that movie helps us to understand the family system in the Western world, and also how a family runs without a mother, and when a lady came there as a caregiver, how she molded the children who were very much restless, and their songs played an important role to make others happy and mindful. So this is something which was related with our psychosocial presence. So I'm narrating Sound of Music. But if you are interested to know the history of Sound of Music, then definitely we should encourage the facts like who was the director, where the entire movie shoot, and who were the technicians, and how it impacted the film industry as well as the society, why it has become a classic. So there are fine lines or boundaries between narration and history that we need to know. If here I can come with something which might be brainstorming session, I can ask you a question, and as you have heard my lecture, I think you will be able to give me the answer. Who wrote What is History? The options are: number 1, Romila Thapar; number 2, D.N. Jha; number 3, Bipan Chandra; and number 4, E.H. Carr. The book was written by E.H. Carr. And I am happy to inform you that that book has translated into various regional languages so that students would be able to know the thoughts of E.H. Carr even in their mother tongue as well. So we need to understand or need to respect those fine lines between history and narration. That narration is also a theoretical perception where we are mainly focusing on the ways of writing and the ways of expressing. Narration is more emotional and sensitive than history. Sometimes narration creates sensation in the society because how you are narrating a story, that is depending on your own reservations. I can give you one example. If we talk on the writings of Mao Zedong. Who was Mao Zedong? He was a very famous Chinese politician who was a part of the Chinese Communist Party. His writings were controversial for some people, how they narrated his writings, and definitely their observations created doubts in the minds of the people. So they thought not to encourage reading the writings of Mao Zedong. But for others who do not believe in that kind of reservation, that what he wrote all were definitely not proper in terms of our societal presence and our political aspirations, they might think that his writings are having that kind of potential to change the society or to transform the minds of the people. I also have the same opinion regarding some of the writings of Mao Zedong, that when he talked on education, as how he gave emphasis on mass education, which is very much important. So why I have given one more example, that is to make you understand that to narrate a story and to justify its historical essence, these are, though overlapped with each other, but they are having different connotations. That means history definitely comes first because we always are giving utmost priority to the facts which are real. We should not concoct, we should not imagine history, because when we talk on humans, we need to be realistic. We need to give you the impression which is true, not something which is imaginary, fictitious. Historians are the reporters because they are reporting you the true events. History is not myth. History is not something where we are only giving emphasis on our emotions. History helps us to understand past so that we can improve our present and we can be better in our future as we are learning from our mistakes, both from past and present. History helps us to have a better society. History helps the policymakers to improvise their policies. But narration is something which is the reflection of our emotional thoughts and what I can say, which is subjective to some extent, because when we are narrating something, sometimes we are not very sure like all the facts are real or not. So we need to keep those boundaries between narration and history. All the narrations are not history, and all the history are not narration or narratives. Because history means to face the reality, to know the reality, to learn reality and apply your realistic approaches. Narration means to tell you stories which you can hear or visualize, but all the narrations are not history, because if I give you an example from Sultana's Dream by Begum Rokeya, which is perhaps the first scientific novel of our country, where she talked about a society where women, they rule over the men, and the society is having the scientific, what I can say, amenities which were that time absurd or unthinkable. As she wrote Sultana's Dream in the 19th century, it was written in the language English, and she talked about solar power, etc. During that time, people, they never thought to have those facilities which she imagined. So it is something like a narration, but it cannot be history, because what she thought, especially about how women, they rule in the society, that is a myth, I must say. If I consider the situation, and it is not a very much futuristic idea to believe in that kind of thought or that kind of perception. That's why she made it clear that it was the dream, not the reality. I hope the students, they understood how I have depicted narration and history and enjoy the lecture. So what is my ending note? That is, we should have an impartial outlook to read the history books, and we should not be biased or reserved with certain ideas which are harmful for the society. Definitely, all of us are flexible to express our ideas, but we should not harm others as well with regard to their sentiments or their presence in the society, which is not only physical but also emotional. For that reason, we need to follow those fine lines between history and narration. Thank you.